My name's Tyler. I'm 34, and my wife Emma is 32. We first met a little over 10 years ago at a local music festival that was one of those spontaneous last-minute decisions. I wasn't even supposed to go, a buddy bailed, and I figured why not just head out alone. Best decision I ever made. It was a Saturday afternoon, brutally hot, and the food truck lines were ridiculous. I ended up behind Emma while waiting for coffee. She turned around and made some sarcastic comment about how caffeine should be a basic human right at festivals, and I cracked up. We started talking, and something just clicked. She had this quick wit, this sparkle in her eyes that made it impossible not to smile back. Before the coffee even came, I already knew I didn't want the conversation to end. We spent the whole afternoon together, hopping between stages, trading stories, and laughing over the ridiculous outfits people were wearing. It felt easy, natural, like we'd known each other for years even though we'd just met. At the end of the night, when the last band played their final song, I asked if I could see her again. She said yes without hesitating. From there, it was like we were on fast forward. We started dating seriously within a month. Emma moved into my apartment about a year later, a tiny place above a bakery that always smelled like fresh bread. Money was tight back then, but we didn't care. We were building something together, and that was enough. 2 years after we met, I proposed. It wasn't some huge, orchestrated moment, just a simple dinner at home, her favorite song playing softly in the background, and a ring I'd been carrying around in my jacket pocket for weeks because I couldn't find the perfect moment. Turned out that night was perfect enough. She cried, said yes immediately, and we spent the rest of the night dancing barefoot in the kitchen. We got married the following summer, surrounded by family and friends. My brother Jake stood by my side as my best man, and Emma's sister was her maid of honor. It was a small, outdoor wedding, nothing too fancy, just the way we wanted it. The sun set as we said our vows, and when I looked at Emma, I remember thinking that somehow, some way, I had managed to win the lottery without even buying a ticket. Life felt like it was just getting started, and we couldn't wait to see where it would take us. After the wedding, Emma and I moved into a 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city. It wasn't anything extravagant, a little older, needed some updating, but it had good bones, as they say, and we both immediately saw the potential. More importantly, it felt like ours the minute we walked through the door. Emma took charge of the decorating. She's always had an eye for colors and details, things I wouldn't even notice at first glance, like how a certain shade of blue could make a room feel cooler, or how rearranging a few pieces of furniture could completely change the energy of a space. She filled the house with plants, candles, and cozy throws, and slowly but surely, it turned into a home that felt warm and alive. I focused on the backyard. When we moved in, it was basically a patch of overgrown grass and a sad-looking shed, but over a couple of summers, I built a deck, planted a little vegetable garden, and put up a hammock between the 2 big maple trees. Emma used to tease me, calling me Farmer Tyler, when I'd come inside with dirt on my jeans and a goofy grin because my tomatoes were finally starting to ripen. Our days were busy, but good. I ran a small marketing agency downtown, mostly working with local businesses, coffee shops, tech startups, boutiques. Emma had landed a great position as a project manager at a mid-sized tech company. She loved it, the fast pace, the endless to-do lists, the sense of checking things off one by one. It fit her perfectly. We made a point to carve out time together, no matter how hectic things got. Friday nights were always us nights. Sometimes it was a movie marathon, other times just wine and takeout from our favorite Thai place. Sundays were usually slower, sleeping in, grocery shopping together, meal prepping for the week while music played low in the background. We traveled when we could. Long weekends to the mountains, a couple of trips to the beach. We always talked about saving up for a big trip to Europe, but we figured there was no rush. Life was full, and we thought we had all the time in the world. Emma had this way of making even ordinary moments feel special. Like how she'd insist on dancing with me in the kitchen while dinner simmered on the stove, or how she'd leave little notes in my lunch bag when I had early meetings. I still have a few tucked away in a drawer in my desk, silly doodles, little good luck messages, or just a quick, I love you. Looking back, those days feel like a blur of warmth and routine, a life we built one small, steady step at a time. Nothing perfect, but everything real. One of the things I loved most about our life was how naturally Emma and I blended into each other's families and circles of friends. It wasn't always perfect, of course, no family is, but for the most part, it felt like we were all genuinely happy to be connected. Emma got along great with my parents. My mom especially adored her, always telling me how lucky I was to have found someone bright enough to keep up with me and kind enough to soften me out. Emma would laugh whenever she heard that, joking that taming me was her greatest accomplishment. Family dinners were loud, filled with the clatter of dishes and overlapping conversations, and somehow Emma fit right into the chaos from day one. My brother Jake. Well, Jake was a character. Always the life of the party, the first one to crack a joke, and the last one to leave any gathering. He and Emma hit it off almost immediately, too, trading banter and inside jokes like they'd known each other their whole lives. I loved seeing them laugh together. Jake could bring out this effortless, carefree side of Emma that I didn't even realize I needed to see sometimes. Emma's parents had moved a few states away before we met, but we visited them a couple of times a year. They were quieter, more reserved than my family, but they clearly loved her deeply. Her dad and I bonded over a shared love of baseball, and her mom and Emma could spend hours together fussing over recipes or flower arrangements. I felt welcomed, accepted, part of something bigger than just the two of us. As for friends, we had a good mix. Some were from college, others from work or hobbies we picked up along the way. Emma made friends wherever she went, book clubs, yoga classes, even random conversations at coffee shops. She had this openness about her, this warmth, that people were just drawn to. I was more reserved, but I always felt proud standing next to her, knowing she saw something in me worth bringing into her bright world. We talked a lot about the future. Kids were on the horizon, not urgently, but definitely something we both wanted. We'd even picked out names we liked during one late-night drive back from a wedding. I can still remember Emma laughing and shaking her head when I suggested naming a future son after my favorite baseball player, saying, "There's no way I'm raising a Mickey in 2025, Ty." We dreamed about travel to Italy, Greece, maybe a road trip along the West Coast. We made lists of places to go and restaurants to try. Life was busy, sure, but it felt full in the best way. Like we were laying the foundation for a future we both believed in. At the heart of it all, it was simple. It was coming home after a long day to find Emma curled up on the couch with a book. It was her stealing the covers at night. It was the easy silence between us when no words were needed. It was all the small, ordinary things that made up an extraordinary life. At least, that's how it seemed. It's strange how the little things are what get you. Not some big flashing neon sign screaming something's wrong, but just small shifts. Quiet changes you can't put your finger on right away. Looking back now, I think my first real gut twinge happened about 6 months ago, but I brushed it off. You tell yourself not to be that guy, the jealous, paranoid husband. You tell yourself to trust the person you love. So that's what I did. Until I couldn't anymore. It started with Emma's phone. She used to be one of those people who practically forgot her phone existed. It would sit face up on the kitchen counter for hours without a second thought. But little by little, I noticed she started keeping it closer. Always face down. Always on silent. At first, I joked about it, called her secret agent Emma. She laughed and said work had been crazy and she was just trying to stay on top of things. I didn't think too much of it at the time. Then there were the gym sessions. Emma and I had always been good about going together, a little routine we carved out between the chaos of work and life. But lately, she kept insisting she was going later because her schedule was too packed in the mornings. It wasn't a huge deal. I figured maybe she just liked the different classes offered at night, but it meant we weren't spending that time together anymore. More and more, our evenings drifted apart. The real kicker came one night when she got home from the gym way later than usual. She was flustered, almost jittery. When I asked how her workout was, she hesitated just a beat too long before saying it was fine, just a new instructor who was way too intense. Then she changed the subject so fast it made my head spin, rambling about a new Thai place she wanted to try that had just opened up across town. I didn't say anything, but something twisted in my gut. It wasn't the words, it was the way she said them. Too quick, too rehearsed, like she was waiting to see if I'd press her on it. I didn't. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was just stressed with work, tired, looking for problems where there weren't any. But the unease didn't go away. It sat with me like a stone in my stomach, heavy and constant. One night, after she went to bed early claiming a headache, I sat downstairs alone, flipping channels but not really watching anything. My mind kept wandering. Was she really tired? Was she really at the gym all those nights? I hated myself for thinking that way. I wasn't supposed to doubt her. We were a team, weren't we? Still, the next morning, when she left for work, I found myself walking over to her gym bag. I wasn't planning to snoop, not really. I told myself I was just putting away the sneakers she always left by the door. But when I picked up the bag, something fell out, a crumpled receipt from a bar downtown. Not a gym, a bar. The timestamp was from 9:48 p.m., right around the time she was supposedly cooling down from her insane workout. I stood there for a long minute, just staring at that stupid little piece of paper. It felt like holding a live grenade, not knowing whether to throw it, disarm it, or let it blow my whole world apart. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I folded the receipt up and shoved it into my pocket. Told myself again and again that there had to be an explanation. But deep down, something had shifted. And once you feel that crack, you can never really unfeel it. The thing about doubt is that once it's in your head, it spreads like wildfire. You start noticing things you would have brushed off before. You start reading into moments you never used to think twice about. It wasn't just the phone anymore. It was how Emma started dressing differently too, not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. New tops that hugged a little tighter. A few new pairs of heels when she used to be all about sneakers. She'd always taken care of herself, sure, but this was different. Like she was getting ready for something or someone that wasn't me. Our conversations changed too. Where we used to talk about everything, work, plans for the weekend, silly shows we were binge-watching, now it was mostly surface-level stuff. She'd tell me about her day in vague brushstrokes, but it felt rehearsed, like she was ticking boxes. Work was fine. Traffic was a nightmare. Gym was tough tonight. Always the same, always just enough to keep me from asking more. And when I did ask, that's when the little lies started to slip through. At first, they were small, things like saying she worked late when I found out her office closed early that day. Saying she was out with a coworker when her stories didn't quite match up the next morning. None of it big enough to start a fight over, but enough that it left this sick feeling pooling in my stomach. There were other things too. She got snappy more often, quicker to pick fights over nothing. Once, I asked if she wanted to have a quiet weekend away, just the two of us, like we used to. She looked at me like I'd just suggested we rob a bank. I can't just drop everything, Tyler, she snapped, tossing her bag onto the couch. I have a life, you know. I'm not just sitting around waiting for you to come up with some random plan. I just stood there, stunned. It wasn't even what she said, it was the way she said it. Cold. Defensive. Like spending time with me was suddenly a burden. I apologized, even though I didn't know what I was apologizing for. I felt stupid the second the words left my mouth. She sighed, hugged me quickly like she was checking it off a list, and disappeared upstairs. It became a pattern after that. Short answers. Longer hours away from home. More nights where she came home tired, claiming she needed a shower and a good night's sleep, and went straight to bed without a word. Nights where I sat alone downstairs, pretending the muted sound of the TV could fill the empty space between us. And the thing is, maybe if you looked from the outside, it would all seem normal enough. Life gets busy. People change. Marriages hit rough patches. That's what I kept telling myself. But deep down, a voice I couldn't silence kept whispering. Something is wrong. And worse than that, it felt like whatever was wrong was something she didn't want to fix. There's a loneliness that comes when you're living with someone who's already halfway out the door. You see them every day. You talk about groceries, about plans for the week. You sit next to them on the couch. And still, somehow, they feel 1,000 miles away. That's what it started to feel like with Emma. Like I was reaching out for her, and every time my fingers almost touched her, she slipped just a little further out of reach. The changes were subtle, almost careful. She stopped calling me during the day like she used to. No more funny memes, no random, I miss you texts. I tried brushing it off. Everyone gets busy. Everyone gets tired. But even when we were together, there was a wall between us now, invisible but solid. She was there, but she wasn't there. The hardest part was how good she got at pretending everything was fine when she wanted to. Some nights, she'd slip back into the old Emma, laughing at a dumb joke I made, leaning her head on my shoulder during a movie, reaching for my hand at dinner. And I'd let myself believe it was okay. I'd let myself think maybe I was just being crazy. Maybe all this tension was just in my head. But then it would happen again. The little things. Like the way she jumped a little when her phone buzzed and she thought I might look at the screen. Or how she started keeping her gym bag packed even when she wasn't supposed to be going. Or how she started locking her phone, something we had never done in all our years together. One night, I got home a little earlier than usual and found her sitting out back on the deck. She didn't hear me coming right away, and for a few seconds, I just watched her. She was smiling at her phone, typing something fast with both thumbs. Then, like a switch flipping, She quickly closed whatever she was looking at, shoved her phone into her hoodie pocket, and plastered on a neutral face before turning to greet me. It shouldn't have hurt the way it did. I shouldn't have noticed how fake the smile looked. But I did. I asked her who she was talking to, trying to keep my voice light. She shrugged. Work stuff. Group chat. I nodded like I believed her. Like my heart hadn't just sunk straight through the floor. Later that night, lying awake in bed next to her, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if this was how it started for other people too, not with some grand explosion, but with slow, silent erosion. A chip trust here, a small unanswered question there. Until finally you look around and realize the foundation you built your life on isn't solid anymore. It's just a slipping between your fingers. I didn't know anything for certain. I didn't have proof. But the truth was, I didn't need it. I could feel it in my gut, in my bones. Something was happening. And whatever it was, I was being left behind. It was a Saturday afternoon when my phone rang, my mom's name flashing across the screen. I almost didn't pick up. Emma and I had been tiptoeing around each other all morning, and honestly, I just wasn't in the mood for a chat. But something in my gut told me to answer. I wish I could say I had some sixth sense, some warning of what was coming. But the truth is, you're never really ready for a moment like that. When I answered, my mom didn't waste time on small talk. Her voice was shaky, like she'd been wrestling with herself before making the call. She asked if I was alone. I told her yes, that Emma had just left to run errands, whatever that meant these days. There was a long pause, the kind that makes your skin prickle because you know, instinctively, that something terrible is about to be said. And then she told me. She said she didn't know how to start, that she didn't want to hurt me, but that she couldn't keep it to herself anymore. She said she had seen something she wished she hadn't, something between Emma and Jake. My brother. My best man. My own flesh and blood. At first, I didn't understand. It was like my brain couldn't process the words, like hearing a language I didn't speak. I kept asking her to explain, but she kept apologizing, her voice cracking. She told me she had seen them together, not once, not by accident, but multiple times. Whispers, touches that lingered too long, glances that said everything words didn't have to. And then last weekend, she had seen them leaving a restaurant together, Jake's hand resting on the small of Emma's back, the kind of touch that makes no sense between a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law unless something awful is going on. I sat there in stunned silence, feeling my whole body go numb. I couldn't even get the words out to ask the next question, but my mother answered it anyway, as if reading my mind. She said, very carefully, that she thought they were in a relationship, and that from what she had overheard, they had been for some time. I don't know how long I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, the sound of my mother's voice getting smaller and smaller as my world cracked open. She kept saying she was sorry, that she didn't want to meddle, that she thought I deserved to know before things went any further. She said, and this part I'll never forget, that she hoped I could find it in my heart to understand and forgive because, in her words, people make mistakes, even people we love. Understand? Forgive? I wanted to laugh. Or maybe scream. I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might rip out of my chest. Jake. Of all the people in the world. My own brother. The guy I trusted without a second thought. The guy who stood next to me while I promised to love Emma forever. I mumbled something, I don't even know what, and hung up the call. I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, feeling like I was floating outside my own body. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. I honestly can't remember. There's a moment when your life splits cleanly into two parts, before you knew and after you knew. I realized I was standing at that line, blinking stupidly at the wreckage stretching out in front of me. And the worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was the fact that they had both looked me in the eye, day after day, and lied without a flicker of shame. The house was too quiet around me, like it was holding its breath. I heard the front door open. Emma coming back, humming lightly like she didn't have a care in the world. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just sat there, my fists clenched tight enough to make my knuckles ache, wondering how I was supposed to sit across from her now. Wondering how I was supposed to pretend for even one more second that things were okay. Because they weren't. They hadn't been for a long time. And now I finally knew why. I didn't say anything to her that day. I couldn't. I just sat there at the table, my whole body burning from the inside out while Emma babbled on about how crazy the store was, how she found some new organic tea she wanted me to try. Her voice sounded so normal, so disgustingly normal, it made me feel like I might be sick. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The anger was a living thing by then, pacing inside my chest like a caged animal. I thought about all the years I had loved her. I thought about Jake, about how many times I had defended him, helped him, trusted him. Every memory felt tainted now, poisoned. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't let them keep walking all over me like this. I needed to take control back. The next morning, I waited until Emma left for work, if she even was going to work, and I got to work myself. First thing I did was call a locksmith. It felt weird at first, letting a stranger into my house, but I was past the point of caring. I told him straight up, change every lock. Front, back, side doors, all of it. He didn't ask questions. Maybe he saw it in my face that today wasn't the day for small talk. While he worked, I went upstairs and started pulling Emma's things out of the closet. It felt mechanical at first, her sweaters, her dresses, her shoes, but somewhere around the third armful, something inside me snapped. I threw open the window in our bedroom and started tossing it all out. Piece by piece, handful by handful. Her carefully curated outfits, her expensive handbags, her jewelry boxes, all of it raining down onto the front lawn like confetti at the end of a funeral. When I got to the gifts I had given her, the necklace from our 5th anniversary, the watch she had begged for last Christmas, I hesitated for a second. Then I packed them up neatly, dropped them into a box, and carried it straight out to the trash bin. She didn't deserve to keep anything that came from my love. Not anymore. By the time the locksmith finished, the house felt different. Emptier. Cleaner, somehow. I paid him double what he asked, and thanked him without meeting his eyes. After he left, I locked the doors, bolted the windows, and sat on the living room couch, just breathing. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, the air felt a little lighter. It didn't take long for Emma to realize something was wrong. Around 5 o'clock, my phone lit up with her name. Then again, and again. I didn't answer. She pounded on the door for a while, calling my name, rattling the handle like she thought maybe she could still get inside. I sat in the kitchen, sipping a beer, staring at the clock. Eventually, the knocking stopped. My phone kept buzzing. Texts, voicemails, more missed calls. The messages started off casual. Hey, babe, I think there's something wrong with the door. Then confused. Tyler, are you home? What's going on? Then frantic. Please answer me, Tyler. Please. I didn't respond. I deleted every message without even reading past the first line. She made her choice. She chose lies and betrayal. She chose Jake. Now she could live with it. When the sun finally set and the porch light clicked on, I stood at the window and watched her gather the mess I'd thrown out. She tried to shove things into the back seat of her car, crying and muttering to herself. She kept glancing back at the door like maybe, just maybe, I'd change my mind and let her back in. But I didn't. I locked the deadbolt, pulled the curtains closed, and turned away. From that moment on, as far as I was concerned, Emma was a ghost. She didn't exist here anymore. Not in my house. Not in my life. After I shut Emma out of my life, there was still one loose end gnawing at me, keeping the anger alive like a slow-burning fire. Jake. It wasn't enough to just cut him off. Not after what he'd done. I couldn't stomach the idea of him just walking away from this, smiling that same smug grin he'd always gotten away with since we were kids. He needed to pay. Not just personally. I wanted it to cost him something real. Something that would stick. It didn't take much digging. Jake had been running his so-called designer clothing business for a few years now, flashy pop-up stores, exclusive inventory, half of it smoke and mirrors. I had always suspected it wasn't completely above board, but I kept my mouth shut because he was my brother. Not anymore. Turns out a few of his suppliers weren't exactly reputable. Some of the premium brands he advertised weren't genuine, not even close. He was passing off cheap knockoffs as the real thing, selling fakes at full price to customers who trusted him. All it took was a couple of quiet phone calls to a few of the right people, old clients I knew personally through my work in marketing, and the ball started rolling faster than I even expected. Lawsuits came first. Angry customers demanding refunds, threatening legal action. Then the brands themselves caught wind of it, and the real hammer came down: trademark violations, fraud investigations. His little empire crumbled almost overnight. One by one, his stores shut their doors, his online presence disappeared, and his name started showing up on industry blacklists. Nobody wanted to work with him. Nobody trusted him anymore. I didn't even need to gloat. The beauty of it was, Jake didn't even know I was behind it. He probably thought it was just bad luck, or a few angry customers finally catching on. He could spend the rest of his life wondering how everything fell apart. And I hope he does. The hardest part, though, harder than wrecking Jake's career, harder than watching Emma self-destruct from afar, was cutting off my family. My parents tried to act like everything could still be salvaged, like we could sit down over Sunday dinner and patch it all up with a few awkward conversations and too much wine. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit at that table and pretend that betrayal this deep could be forgiven. I sent a message to the family group chat, short and cold. I know everything. I don't want apologies, and I don't want excuses. I'm done. Please don't contact me again. And then I left. Left the chat, blocked their numbers, deleted their contact information. It wasn't an impulsive decision. I thought about it carefully, turned it over and over in my mind like a stone in my hand. But in the end, the truth was simple. Blood means nothing when loyalty's dead. I don't know if they cried. I don't know if they fought about it, blamed each other, tried to reach out behind the blocks. And honestly, I don't care. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. And I wasn't looking back. The strange thing about walking away from everything you thought you needed is how light you start to feel afterward. For months, maybe even years, I'd been carrying around this invisible weight, convincing myself it was normal, convincing myself it was just part of life. But once it was gone, once I shut the door on Emma, on Jake, on all the people who had failed me, it was like I could finally breathe again. The first few weeks were weird, though. I won't pretend I just bounced back overnight. The silence in the house was deafening at first. I'd catch myself setting a second coffee mug on the counter without thinking, or reaching for my phone to send Emma some dumb meme before remembering there was no one there to read it anymore. Grief, I realized, isn't just for death. It's for dreams too. And every day, I was letting go of the version of my life I thought I was living. But slowly, without even meaning to, I started building something new. I renovated the house, nothing fancy, but enough to make it feel like mine again. New paint on the walls, new furniture, new routines. I started hitting the gym again, not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because it felt good to be in control of something. I took weekend trips, even if it was just a couple of hours away, places Emma and I had always talked about visiting but never made time for. There was something almost sacred about doing it alone, like every mile I drove was putting more distance between me and the man I used to be. It was during one of those trips that I met her. Her name's Lily. It wasn't some dramatic, movie-worthy moment. No crashing into each other on a crowded street or locking eyes across a room. We just happened to be at the same farmer's market one Saturday morning, both reaching for the same basket of peaches. She laughed, I apologized awkwardly, and somehow, we ended up wandering the stalls together for the next 2 hours, talking about everything and nothing. Lily wasn't like Emma. She didn't have that polished, magazine cover perfection. She was real. She talked with her hands, laughed too loudly at bad jokes, wore scuffed sneakers with her sundresses. And when she asked me questions, she actually listened to the answers, like she cared about the small details that made me who I was. We didn't dive into anything fast. I wasn't ready for that, and to her credit, neither was she. We started slow, coffees that turned into lunches, phone calls that stretched past midnight. She didn't push. She didn't pry. She just showed up, day after day, like a steady hand reaching out in the dark. For the first time in a long time, I started to believe that maybe love wasn't supposed to feel like walking a tightrope. Maybe it was supposed to feel like solid ground. I'm not naive. I know how easily things can fall apart. I know how quickly people can show you one face and live another behind your back. But somehow, with Lily, it's different. And for once, I'm not scared of what's coming next. Some stories don't end the way you thought they would. Mine started as a love story, one of those quiet, steady ones built on years of laughter, shared dinners, lazy Sunday mornings. For a long time, I thought that was the whole arc. I thought Emma and I would grow old together in our little house, with our overgrown backyard and our unfinished travel list taped to the fridge. But life doesn't care about your plans. It has a way of cracking the foundation under your feet and waiting to see what you'll do with the pieces. When I think about it now, the betrayal, the lies, my brother, all of it, it almost feels like it happened to someone else. Like I'm looking back on the memories of a man who still believed people showed you who they really were just once. I know better now. The truth is, getting through it didn't happen in one dramatic moment. It wasn't when I kicked Emma out, or when I brought Jake's little empire crashing down. It happened in smaller ways. In quiet mornings with coffee and no silence to fill. In random walks where my mind wandered and didn't circle back to them. In choosing not to respond to her messages, even when I knew she was still trying, still calling from blocked numbers, still emailing from strange addresses with subject lines like please and I'm sorry. I never opened them. Not once. My peace didn't come from punishing them. It came from no longer needing anything from them at all. I've started letting people back into my life. A few friends I had pulled away from when everything fell apart, and some new ones too. I've been working more, traveling more, even started volunteering once a week at a community program that teaches digital skills to teenagers. They're loud, messy, always trying to act cool, and somehow they remind me that the world isn't all betrayal and burned bridges. There's still good out there. Still honesty. Still new beginnings. Lily and I are still taking things one day at a time. She knows I've been hurt, and she never asks me to rush. She doesn't flinch when I talk about what happened, and she never makes me feel like I'm damaged goods. Being with her is simple. Not easy, necessarily, nothing real ever is, but simple in the way that matters. I don't feel like I'm constantly being tested or measured. I'm just seen. Sometimes I still wake up expecting the old life to be waiting for me, like I'll walk downstairs and Emma will be making coffee, Jake will be texting me about meeting up for beers, and none of this will have happened. But then I breathe, stretch, and realize I'm not mourning that life anymore. I'm just remembering it. That's the difference. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. Loyalty is quiet. It doesn't announce itself, doesn't demand recognition. You only know it's there because everything feels steady when it is, and completely hollow when it's gone. I lost a lot, but I found myself again. Not the version of me who needed approval or forgiveness from people who didn't deserve it, but the version who's honest, even when it hurts, and strong, even when no one's watching. To anyone out there who's been through betrayal like this, you'll make it out. Not unchanged, never unchanged, but wiser, sharper, more awake to the parts of yourself you forgot to protect. The pain doesn't vanish, but it softens, and eventually you stop living in reaction to it. You start living despite it. And when that day comes, it doesn't feel like a victory parade. It feels like breathing for the first time in a long, long time.